He had a plane, but I don't know if I ever flew that. I just flew with him. I remember I flew that. I don't know if I remember flying with him, but I don't know if I ever flew. How many different kind of planes is that? Can you tell by?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, I think, if I counted right. No, 12, I missed 2.
I was going to say, I remember counting up to 12.
12, yeah.
But then I wasn't sure I had them all. So
Yeah.
I knew I flew at least 12.
Yeah, there were 12 here that I wrote down.
The 4 engine was C-54 and the B-24. Those were the
13, I think I missed that one. That'd be 13.
13. I know it was 12, and then I thought there was 1 or 2 more beside that I know there's one little one yet that I flew that I can't think the name right off. It was like a Piper. It was a competitor to the Piper Cub, but I forget the name of that one. It wasn't quite as popular as the Piper Cub. B-18, I flew in that, but in fact that was the first airplane I ever rode in. That was at Langley Field. B-18 was a bomber, twin engine bomber, but I never flew that. I just flew in it, but when I entered the Air Force, I never had a ride in an airplane.
Yeah, he was never in an airplane.
Never was in an airplane.
Wow.
So then they had B-18 there at Langley Field, and we got a ride in one. We went to New York one time, another guy and me, just for a ride. C-54, C-47, C-46, C-119.
The one you said was like a DC-3, you said it was a C-47.
Yeah, DC-3 is the civilian version, and C-47 was the military version. They're both the same aircraft.
Okay, but the other ones, it was like those flying boxcars. That looked
That's the
different.
119. They used to call those flying boxcars
Okay.
because they were just like a boxcar with motor on it.
Mm-hmm.
These were C-119. We used to fly those out of Valley Forge.
Mm-hmm.
Willow Grove, near Valley Forge. I flew them a couple of years out of, that was in the reserve. I flew those.
Mm-hmm.
And AT-6 I flew out of Reading Airport to get my flying time.
I think I read that DC-3 was the last plane they designed that had an infinite airframe life, and that didn't have a expiration, and that was strong enough that it would keep going. Whereas the rest of them, all the rest of them after that, after so many hours, they had to be taken out of service because they were too weak. But that still had the.
Yeah, they're still flying some of those today yet.
Yeah, they are.
And that was made in the 30s. The original one was made in the 30s.
Yeah, and now they re-engined them. They now have real powerful engines compared to then.
Yeah.
You know.
They just kept putting engines in them all the time, using them over and over.
Yeah.
Just put different new engines in them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's quite a collection. There's at least 12 or 13
Yeah,
in here.
12 or 13. There's one small one yet that I can't think of. I may think of it along the line somewhere. It was the competitor to the Piper Cub. It was Piper Cub and
It's like a Cherokee or something.
Cherokee.
Yeah, was it Cherokee? Is that?
I think that was a trade name of it. Cherokee.
Yeah, I don't remember who made it, but I think I remember seeing. There were 2 of them that were in competition there.
Yeah, Cherokee, I believe, that wasn't the name of the plane, but I would believe it was a model of that plane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I know what you're.
It was another small little plane like a Piper Cub.
Yeah. They're starting to make those again, those small planes.
Yeah.
They've started making them again.
Did I give you a Cessna?
Cessna,
What's that?
yeah, that's what
Yeah,
it was,
Cessna UC-78. But there was a Cessna. I guess that was called a Cessna. A Beechcraft.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of those.
I didn't give you Beechcraft.
No.
Well, I think the, was that, I flew the Beechcraft too. And that was a twin engine plane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that we flew the Beechcraft twin engine.
Yeah, that's quite a big number.
Even back in the 40s, that's 50 years ago.
Yeah.
You kind of think, you
It's a
know,
long time to
50
remember
years
all
ago,
the
you know,
numbers.
thinks you know, to think back 50 years,
Because that was 63 was when you retired from the Air Force, wasn't it?
62,
62.
retired in 62. I had 21 years in. I should have really had 21 years in. I went in 1940. It should have been a little. I should have had more than 21 years. But no, I guess it was 20. See, I went in at the end of 40. I went at November 15th of 1940.
Yeah.
And then I think in June of 62 is when I retired. So it would be about 21. I know I have a little over 21 years in.
Mm-hmm.
You had to have a minimum of 20. And sometimes they got your paperwork filed up, and if you were 1 month short, you couldn't get your pension.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure had 20 years in, so I put 21 in to have one for
On the safe
one for
side.
good luck.
One spare, yeah.
Because they had some guys, they lost some of their time, and they had like 19 years and 11 months or something, and
Oh man.
you're out. You don't have 20 years, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
And I had, how many hours of flying? Around 3,000 hours or 3,200 or something like that.
He had more flying time than the guy that was ahead of the
Than my commander.
commander. He had more flying time than the commander.
And I was,
I think you said one thing you had 5,000. Was it 5,000 hours?
no, I wasn't that
Wasn't that
high.
many?
See, in those days, you didn't get a lot of hours in like you did today.
Mhm.
Like you do today where they fly for 10, 12 hours at a time. See, you only 1 and 2 and 3 hour flights, you know.
Yeah, but when you went to Greenland,
They were long.
Well,
That was long.
they were long flights, yeah.
And you made trips back and forth
Yeah,
quite a bit on that. And you flew over to Europe,
yeah.
Germany, England, and they were long flights. No. I know you had more hours than the commander there, that one place.
Well, and then I also was what they call a command pilot.
Mhm.
That was the highest rating you could get. You become a pilot,
Mhm.
and then you became, what was the middle one with just a star in your wings? I couldn't think of the designation of that. And then the top was the star with a wreath around it. That was a command pilot.
Mhm.
And I was a command pilot, and the commander of the outfit only had a star on his. he was he didn't care for that too much.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, Dad, he didn't want to sit in the office and work. He wanted to be out in that flight line,
Yeah.
which is what he was,
Yeah.
which he did.
Yeah.
So that way he got,
Got to
you
do
know,
that.
more hours. Where that command pilot was in there
In the office.
in the office sitting behind a desk.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't a command. He was just a regular
I
pilot.
mean, just a regular
He didn't
pilot.
get-
he
he
didn't
didn't-
get to be that because he was in the office.
Well, and another thing, you had to have so many years of time in too. We see a lot of guys, they come in and they went to flying school, and then they graduated, but they didn't have much time in the Air Force. You had to have 2 years in the Air Force or 2 or 3 years to become a command pilot. See, I was in from 1940 and that all counted.
Yeah, okay.
Even though it wasn't an officer, it all counted as time. So I had my my years in,
Mhm.
and all I needed to do was get my 2,000, you had to have 2,000 minimum hours to get command pilot.
Mhm.
So as soon as I put my 2,000 hours in, well, I got my command pilot
Mhm.
because I already had my years in.
Mhm.
Well, they didn't have their years in.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, Drew was telling me that right now in the commercial, not the commercial, like the private flying
Mhm.
arena, what's really hot are these home-built planes.
oh,
And he's-
Ultralight.
No, not ultralights. They're ones that you build yourself. I mean, they're made from kits. They're
Oh,
not,
uh-huh.
they're not, ultralights. And he said the very fastest ones of those now go 300 miles an hour.
Oh,
So
wait,
that's
yeah.
really, yeah, so that's really phenomenal. You know, that's really fast.
Oh, it is, yeah.
That's probably about as fast as you can go with a propeller, I would think. And yeah,
Yeah.
he said that's really the hot thing.
And you
right
build
now.
them yourself.
Yeah, they're kit form. You know, you get them in a kit and you put them together.
Mhm.
I mean, you're not taking passengers commercially or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, he said they're up to that speed. But I guess they're pretty expensive and it takes an enormous amount of time to put them together.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it takes a couple of years. But yeah, it's really fast.
Yeah. I'm glad they didn't have them when he was flying. I'd be afraid there's something he didn't get together right.
You be real careful because you're going to fly it.
It's your own life, that's
Yeah, I
right.
guess.
Boy.
But, yeah, it's really a hot thing right now.
Uh-huh.
I think he said they're about 150 or 175,000 for the kit. That's
Oh,
what
boy.
I recall he said. And then you had to put in, I don't know how many, couple thousand hours putting them together.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Complicated. So,
You have to have a big area.
big garage.
I hope you get those wings spread out there.
Yeah. Well, we saw a little bit of the wings at the museum, at that Olds Museum. They showed that one plane that the guy made. It had the wooden, you know, those little, like spars or the little
Mhm.
things that are in the wings. That
Mm-hmm.
imagine that was pretty tedious.
Oh,
And another
sure.
thing that, you know, those wooden propellers you said about, you know, that's how you started them.
Crank them.
You pull that
Turn
propeller
it
down.
down, turn it
That's
down.
how you started them.
Yeah.
Those Piper Cubs, that's the way you started those always. You just pull the propeller down and then start it.
Yeah.
And you had to pull it down and step back so you didn't get hit in the head when it came around.
Sucked in, yeah.
Because a lot of times the guys get hit in the head with those things. And
Yeah, I've only seen that done twice. You know, one time I was in the plane, and I mean, the people that did it, was a pilot. They knew what they were
Yeah,
doing, but
right.
that really is scary.
Oh.
Because I mean, first of all, you have your hands in that,
Yeah,
you pull it down,
exactly.
and then it's like, and you're only a foot away from it. It's sucking you in. I mean,
I
Yeah.
know. Oh,
And then if you
I
slip
wanna
and
do
fall or
that.
something, you got to make sure you have good footing because a lot of guys got hurt.
well, I can
Killed.
imagine that,
Yeah,
because no matter what bat would touch, it would cut you in half. You
Oh,
know?
my goodness.
I'm thinking that PT-17, but I think that had a starter on it. Yeah, we didn't. I don't think we pulled that propeller. But I know that little Piper Cub we had to start ourselves, pulling it down,
Mhm.
and in that other little single-engine plane, you pull the propeller to start it. Now that Taylor craft we flew, I think that had a starter on it because that was a new airplane. The
Mhm.
airport manager bought that brand new, and that's the one we took up to Ohio.
Mhm.
And when we went to buy this twin engine UC-78,
Mhm.
it only had 50 hours on it or something
Wow.
like that, just a few hours on it. It was a brand new airplane. But there was a defect in the oiling system and the engine seized up.
Mhm.
And then we were flying along, all of a sudden, boom, prop stood still, didn't move.
You're supposed to be able to see that. I don't think so.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything got quiet. That thing stopped and everything got real quiet.
Yeah.
And we said, uh-oh, I believe we're going down. He was flying it, luckily he was flying it at the time. I was flying it before that. And we come out over Lake Erie, and then we kept coming, just got in over land, and he was flying it because we were going to land in Ohio, and he was going to land it because his airplane, and before we got in very far, the thing quit. And he brought it down, landed it in a wheat field with no wheat, just little stubbles and real level, and just coasted to a landing, and just like it was an airport. Didn't damage a plane whatsoever.
That was good. That was luck. You
Yeah.
had a good place to land.
We landed on a farm that was owned by a Navy pilot that just got separated from the service,
Mhm.
and he was a mechanic also,
Hmm.
and he's the guy, I told you the story about it. He said, we pushed it into the barn then, and he said, don't worry about it. He said, you get me the parts. He says, I'll fix it for you.
Mhm.
So they got the parts and sent them up to him, and he put the new parts in and started it up, took it for a test flight, took his parents and a couple other people for rides in it, and after he was all done taking people for rides, he called down and
It's
said,
ready.
your plane's ready. That was a good place to land.
That was.
So we picked out a good field.
Yeah, it was a good field. Imagine that needed a lot of parts if the oil went off,
I don't know what,
unless it shut off
It-
automatically.
they said it froze up, so I presume, they said the oiling, something was defective in the oiling system and it didn't get oil and it locked up, you know.
Yeah.
You'd think that you'd have to rebuild the whole inside. I don't know what all they had to do.
He wanted a prop.
Yeah, he
You
just,
said.
all he says is he wanted a prop to put above his mantle. He said,
Wow.
no money, I don't want any money, all I want is a prop to put above my mantle.
Mhm.
He was a former Navy pilot, so, you know,
The guy got him a prop.
guy got him a prop, took it up, gave him the prop and took the airplane back. That was an unusual experience, I'll tell you. That was the only forced landing I guess I ever had. I never had a forced landing in the Air Force. A real one. We practiced a lot of them, but never had a real one. And that one engine went wide open on landing. That was the only. See, the thing is, all the airplanes you flew in the Air Force were brand new ones.
Mhm.
They were brand new ones off the assembly line, so you didn't have much trouble with them, you know.
Mhm.
Everything was brand new. But I had that one carburetor linkage break, and it fell wide open. In other words, the throttle fell wide open. I was coming in for a landing, and I couldn't figure out what went wrong, so I just cut the ignition off and cut both engines dead, and just landed with
Mhm.
with both engines dead.
Mhm.
One night we were down in Montgomery, Alabama, and I was going to school down there at the time for, what was it called? Command pilot school or some kind of school. Montgomery, Alabama, and then for us to get our flying time in for pay for the month, you know, why we flew planes at night to get our 4 hours in. And I forget what plane I was flying, but it wasn't too familiar. And let's see, what you reached up here to put your landing lights on, I guess, somehow. And I reached up there and I pulled something down, and instead of pulling the switches on, I pulled some wires out. Everything went black in the cockpit. Pulled something out,
boy.
everything was black. I didn't have a flashlight. Usually you carried a flashlight. I had no lights, couldn't see the airspeed or nothing. Everything was black in the cockpit. It was nighttime, so that was another unusual experience.
Well, how did you ever get out of that situation?
I just had to land looking at the runway lights. I had no lights in the cockpit. Oh, the engines ran. I didn't shut the engines off, but I couldn't see my instruments. So I just made sure I went a little faster than what I normally would go, because if you go a little faster, that doesn't matter. But if you go too slow, you'll stall out and crash land. So I just made sure I had plenty of airspeed and landed it. And I guess I was in by myself, and I didn't have anybody with me. I think I was flying that thing by myself. And then another hair-raising experience was, how was that? We were coming back. Was that from Reading?
I know what you're going to say.
In
I
that
think.
UC, what plane did I have that night? Coming back from Reading, and one guy wanted me to pick him up in Buffalo, New York, on the way back. And I stopped and picked him up, and then we hit a terrific storm. I was supposed to come back to Westover Field, Massachusetts. And we landed in Buffalo, picked this guy up, and he was going to be my co-pilot, because I flew up there by myself. He'd be my co-pilot. And then we're gonna fly from Buffalo, New York to Westover Field, Massachusetts, where I was stationed. And we hit this terrific storm, and it was nighttime. And we were bouncing up and down, going crazy. I said, you know, would he fly it? Because I'd call the radio, I'd do the radio work if he would fly it while I called the radio. And got, you know, instructions on the radio. You had to call in where you were, and then the next station, you know, to get a flight, give you a flight plan to the ground controllers. And he was flying it. After a while, he says, "This is too rough for me." He says, "I can't fly this anymore." So I had to fly it and do the radio work. And he was an experienced pilot, you know what I mean? He wasn't a student or anything.
Yeah.
And he said he was too scared to fly that. He said, "I can't fly this." He said, "You have to fly it." And so I flew the thing in.
Well, why didn't you let him do the radio work?
Well, he wasn't familiar with the flight plan. See, I filed the flight plan and had all the places laid out and stuff, and he wasn't familiar with that and stuff. Because I know, instead of him being a help, he would be a help to me. Why, he wasn't much of a help. That was sort of a hair-raising experience. But I never had too much mechanical trouble. Oh, at other time we came into Reading Airport.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say.
We had students, and it lasted 5 weeks, and they budgeted 6 weeks for the. So the sooner you got your class finished, then you could have the time off until the next class came in. So one guy lived in Easton, Pennsylvania, and I lived in Reading. So we could have an airplane and fly home. We could be home then until a new class came in. So we'd fly home, and I'd land at Reading Airport, and somebody picked me up. And it said on the gas cap, "Not suitable for aromatic fuel," whatever aromatic fuel is. It said it's not fuel because these had rubber liners in the gas tanks.
Oh,
This airplane had rubber liners in there, and this aromatic fuel would eat holes in the rubber.
yeah, like dissolve it.
Yeah, so it said right on the cap, you know, you're not supposed to use that fuel because it would eat holes in the rubber tanks, and the tanks would leak.
Yeah, it's like
So they gassed us up, huh?
That's something to do with the chemical.
Yeah,
chemical
there's
structure
chemicals
of
in
those
there.
Aromatics.
Yeah, and they gassed us up at Reading at night, I guess, and maybe they didn't see this aromatic fuel written on there or whatever. And we flew back at night to Arkansas, you know, this other pilot,
That
myself.
was a long distance.
Yeah, well, we landed, I think we had to land one time for gas on the way back at night.
Maybe like 3-4 hours or more than that.
Yeah, we'd fly halfway and then get gas, and then, so we'd be flying along, and I'd look at that gauge, and the old gauge would go down, you know, and I'd say, well, we gotta get gas, the gauge is getting, I mean, the gas tank's getting low. So we'd land and get gas, and take off, you know, and after a while, well, the old gauge would go down again. Anyway, these tanks evidently had holes in them, you know, from this fuel. I think we had to land about 3 times to get back to Arkansas, and we landed and taxied in. And the mechanic says, "Hey," he said, "but you're leaking gas under there, your wings." He said, "The gas is running out." So here we were leaking gas all the way home, flying home there,
Yeah.
because they put the wrong fuel in there. That was sort of an unusual experience.
I'll say. That might have caught fire.
Yeah, because your exhaust pipes, you know,
That shoots.
shoots fire out your exhaust pipe.
Yeah. That was more scary than what
Yeah. Yeah, it could have caught fire.
I hope.
Yeah, I guess.
But I never had a tire blow out on landing. Some of the guys had tires blow out on land. I never had that. That one student drug a wing on me. I had a student that was all ready to graduate. It was, I think, one of his last flights, and I was getting him the last inspection flight, you know, to approve him for graduation, and I took him up and told him what to do and so forth, and I'm sitting there, you know, relaxed and whatnot, and come in for a landing, and boy, he came in and he just flew straight into the runway. He never leveled off. We just hit that runway solid, and boy, did we fly up there. And then we, you know, you get in that attitude, and you're gonna stall out if you.
Yeah.
And boy, I dropped that nose down, and then we went over on one wing, and I thought we were gonna drag right into the runway, and I gave the bottom engine full throttle, and we hit the one wheel, and the thing came back, leveled off, and the guy was sitting there waiting to take it off, and he says, later on, he said, I thought you guys were going to cartwheel down that runway. He said, I never expected you to get that plane leveled off, he said.
People saw it, these are people who saw this.
Yeah, and he was waiting to take off, and he seen what was happening.
Yeah.
He said, then I explained what happened. He says, I just figured that, well, we did drag the runway with the left wingtip. That's how close we were. The left wingtip drug the runway enough that they wouldn't let us fly there. You know, this was on a auxiliary airport. It wasn't at the home airport. It was at the auxiliary airport where we were shooting landings, you know, for practice. He said, I thought you guys were just going to go head over heels. He didn't. So we did. That was about the only closest thing to an accident I ever had.
Well, you have to come down right above the ground and then stall out, don't you? For those
Yeah.
You can't really just like land. You have to come down and then stall.
Stall your airplane out, yeah.
And that's what Drew was telling me. I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought,
Yeah, as long as you don't stall your airplane out, you keep flying.
Yeah.
And after a while, you lose up all your runway, and you got to come down.
He said install and just drop.
You got to come in, and then pull your nose up and stall your airplane. You actually make the airplane stop flying.
Yeah.
And then,
And
but
drop.
you're supposed to be within a couple inches of the runway when you do that.
Yeah,
See?
I
So that
imagine
you
it's
just.
Hard to
Well,
I
judge.
imagine that's hard to judge because that's underneath.
Well,
it.
that's the hardest part of flying is your landing, yeah, because you've got to judge that. Plus, when you fly different airplanes, one plane you're sitting here, the next one you're
Yeah.
sitting up there. You know,
Yeah.
each one's different from the runway, so that's hard to. That's the hard part because you don't know where that wheel is down there because there's no way to see it. That was one thing I was always pretty good at, landings. I always was able to make pretty good landings.
You're a good pilot. You know, Loretta always feels good when you're on the plane. She says she always feels good when her dad's on the plane. Oh,
Are you looking forward to your flight tomorrow?
yeah, I am. Are you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel different about it
Well, I
going
tell
home
you-
than I did coming down because I didn't know what to expect.
When you instruct, you learn. You learn much more than a guy that graduated and then went over and started flying bombers or fighters or something. When you learn from your students, you can learn a lot of stuff. So you really learn a lot from your students. All the instructors were about the best pilots because they learned from their students, and that's why when the war was over in Europe, they put all the instructors in B-24s because they wanted their best pilots to go over and bomb Japan. See, that's what they were going to do, send all the instructor pilots over there to bomb Japan. And they sent all the instructor pilots to B-24s.
That was, yeah, you were saying that was, because that was on here somewhere.
I guess May or June, well, till we got all those different bases closed, it was probably June or July, I guess.
He went around and closed all the bases.
Several of the bases.
Well, not all of them, but a lot
Several.
of them. He'd run the last class through, and then we'd move to another place, and he'd run the last class through there. So he went around to quite a few and closed up the bases. But then he was called back in. Now that was, the first time he was in. Then he was called back in.
For the Korean War, you mean?
And that's when he made the trips up to Greenland.
Yeah, that was
That
Korean
was-
War when I
yeah,
flew to Greenland.
Korean War.
That's when I flew the C-47 and the C-40, C-54. I guess I only flew those two planes during the
Korean War.
Korean War. I flew the C-46 on summer encampments when we'd
Mhm.
We went to the Carolinas one time for 2 weeks training, 2 weeks for a summer,
Mhm.
2 weeks, and then we dropped paratroopers down. I have some pictures, you've probably
Yeah,
seen
I never
those
seen the
pictures I
pictures.
have, where we dropped paratroopers down there all summer.
You were in charge of that whole thing
Mhm.
that year. You was in charge of the whole operation
Mhm.
Yeah, that was
when
at
you did that.
one summer.
one summer.
We flew C-54s.
Which plane was your favorite?
Which was your favorite plane?
To fly. C-54 was a nice 4-engine plane to fly, C-54. That was about the nicest plane to fly. I always liked a lot of engines out there. That's why I went for 2 engine, and then when I got 2 engine, we went to 4 engine.
Mhm.
These guys that had fighter pilots, they only had 1 engine.
One or two quits,
Hmm.
and they had a practice. Like they cut them off and make them continue
Practice
on
landing, yeah.
landing
We're
with.
going-
All with yeah, they cut your engines off. They cut 3 engines off, make you fly on 1 engine.
Well, bring it
Wow.
in on one,
Can
you know,
Imagine that was pretty.
Yeah, that
pretty
was
tough.
practically had to put 2 feet on one rudder to hold the thing, because boy, that'd pull you sideways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Boy, that'd really pull you. And you had,
but they would do that.
because the 1 engine that was running, you had to have that one wide open
Yeah.
to keep airborne.
Yeah, especially if that was on the outside. If it was like the outside.
Yeah, they
it was
always
fine.
they always cut the
Outside.
the inside ones off. They always
Probably
left
did
you have one
ours.
outside. They never left you have the inside one. They always made it as ugly as they could for you, the
Well,
instructors.
that way you learned,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm. Well, sure. I mean, that's what
it
could
was
happen
to your
in
advantage.
reality. You could do 3 3 engines.
Mhm.
Still bring it in.
Yeah. And I know that one guy when I was learning to fly at C-54, he cut 3 engines off at night up at Westover Field there one time when I was learning to fly that thing. And boy, I was losing altitude and the thing was going crooked. I was having a terrible time keeping the thing level till he finally gave me my engines back again.
Yeah, imagine. The B-24s then you never did go to, you never did go to Europe though with that, then the war ended, I guess, about that.
Yeah, we went to Langley Field.
Mhm.
And then they dropped the bomb in, what was it, August? They dropped the atomic bomb in August, I guess.
Mhm.
And once they dropped that, well then they didn't, we probably would have gone over there that
He was
fall.
on. Yeah, he was ready to go over there.
Over to
you know.
Japan.
Mhm.
Because I was checked out in the B-24 and
Mhm.
I made bombing runs and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm. So you're all-
Practice bombing runs. And,
So you're all ready to go then.
yeah.
Right.
mhm.
He was.
I had a Jewish co-pilot and an Arab navigator. And they, you know, you'd think one was Jewish and the other Arab, well, they don't get along, you know. But those guys, all they did was kid each other. They were fun to be with. They would rib each other because one was Jew and the other was Arab, but they got along wonderful. Everybody used to kid them about, you know, what pilot being Jewish and the navigator being Arab.
Well, 1945, B-24, that'd have a Norden bomb sight on, didn't it?
I guess that's what they used at that time.
That
Yeah.
was- that was a big deal.
Oh, Norden was very secret. In fact, that had an explosive in it
Yeah.
that if you were forced down, you were supposed to blow it up, so
Mhm.
the enemy couldn't get that bomb sight because that was the most advanced bomb sight available in World War II.
Mhm.
Yeah, that Norden bomb sight, that was supposed to be tops at that time.
Yeah, there's one of those in the Air and Space Museum. I remember seeing it. They have it on display there now.
They would have it, yeah, somewhere, I don't know.
Mhm.
In fact, I've seen one somewhere on display, but I don't know where I've seen that.
Would it be there at that? Were you in the Reading Air Museum? There's an air museum out there at Reading Airport. I've never
There
been in
is.
it, but I've never.
You had Jason on the last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't go in the museum.
Oh,
though.
didn't you?
No.
Hmm.
I think that was a separate thing.
Mhm.
It was an air show.
Mhm.
And
The northern bomb site looks something like, remember yesterday we seen that
Yeah,
camera?
yeah, that's how I thought it was too when I looked at it.
Yeah.
Because it was like a.
The bomb site looks almost like that camera.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was looking at it. I thought that's what it was too.
And it had handles on it because they took it out after,
Mhm.
you know, when you landed and stuff. They kept that very secret, you know. They didn't want that to fall into enemy hands because that was the latest of a bomb site that was available in World War II.
And when he was flying stuff up to Greenland, that was a secret thing, too.
At the time. Well,
At the time,
they were building that
they
Thule
didn't
air
want
base.
anybody to know they were building that air base, you know.
Yeah. I think. Was that used in Korea? For Korea, or was that
Korean
part of that-
War.
That wasn't part of that DO line, was it? Or was it? That early warning?
That was
Yeah.
Canadian. I think the DO line was run by the Canadians.
Okay. So this was used as a resupply point for the Korean War, I guess.
You mean
Okay.
Thule?
Thule, yeah, that's.
Well, yeah, it was used for supply, and I guess maybe they would have used it for a bomber base or whatever. See, it was close. The closest base we had to Russia at the time was just Thule.
Okay.
It was only a couple hundred miles from Russia.
Mhm.
We could have used it for a lot of different things.
Mhm. Well, like I say, you talked about a lot of things, but yeah, and tomorrow you get, was it 11 o'clock, I guess, a flight,
11:40, I think it is.
11:40.
We leave.
Yeah, is it 11:40?
I think that's what the
We
ticket.
could probably leave here about 10 o'clock. Takes about a half
Oh,
hour to get over to the
okay.
airport.
Uh-huh, all right.
10, between 10 and I guess about 10:15 or so. Normally, we leave here, when you go at 6:30, we leave here at what,
5:30.
5:30? You go there at 6 and then go, but that's pretty close. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll have to do that tomorrow because you have a lot of time. But,
So are you coming back to Michigan again?
If we're invited. You know what Dad said? We're being treated so good and that fed's so good, we're gonna come back. Oh,
yeah, it's really happy that you came out. I mean, that was
Oh,
really nice. It really
it's
was.
really, your place is so nice.
Now, when you talk about anything, we'll know what you're talking about.
Right,
See that-
that's
Yeah,
right.
something.
You know,
Yeah.
somebody talks about something, you try to picture it in your mind, but it's usually not pictured like it really is.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I'm
of course,
so-
that
I'm
sending
glad.
you a picture with,
That
you know,
was helpful,
that
yeah.
was the closest to it.
It showed us a lot, you know.
But now you just know where he
And I-
works and
Yeah.
how far it is to get there. I was often wondering, well, what kind of roads he has to get there, you know, and how bad things would be to get there. But you got 4-lane roads up here,
Yeah.
so many
It's
places.
good.
And I don't go anywhere, but if you do and you go out on those super highways they show, those things are all 70 mile per hour and they're like 6 lanes.
Yeah, up here,
Yeah.
70.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all, in fact, even that 127, you know where we got on and went down and we got on that one only for about a mile there, a little piece. I think that actually is 70 on that. I know it's 70 up a couple stops. But yeah, there's 70-mile speed limits on
I
it.
can't imagine how that.
And like I say, there's 6 lanes, most of them,
I
3 each
know
way.
the roads are much better than what we have down there in Pennsylvania. They're miserable down there.
No, these are nice roads if you really need to drive. You know,
Yeah,
if you're in those
yeah.
places you can really fly. So
The only thing is, when you don't have any hills or anything, you have intersections all the time and you have red lights.
Mhm.
Whereas down in Pennsylvania where you have hills and they put over and unders, you know, the
Yeah.
bridge goes over the top and one goes underneath because you already have the hill built there. All you need to do is put a bridge across the top.
Yeah,
But here you have no hills to do that.
Here you have intersections.
So you got almost everything here is intersections.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So you got to contend with the red lights.
Yeah, if you can get to the big roads, then you don't have
Yeah.
that. Like even that 69, we crossed Saginaw a couple times, that's divided there. It's
Mhm.
like 4 lanes, 2 each
Yeah.
way. You get out a little bit, then that's just straight open, you know, it's like an
Mhm.
expressway.
Is that an interstate 69, is it? Well, then you don't have West Road. goes.
No, not once you get out a little bit, then it's
Yeah.
open. But you have to be going somewhere to use it. So if you're not going anywhere, you don't get to use them.
Mhm.
But rather than go to the airport straight through like we did, the first couple of times I went over and back, I went like around the outside.
Mhm.
It takes about the same amount of time, but you go real fast, but it's a lot longer.
Oh, I see.
distance. But yeah, they're nice roads. They are nice roads. So.
Yeah, your roads are so level here, even if you have snow, you're not climbing up hills and getting stuck
No.
going up the hills here, everything is
It's
level.
level. It's not too hard to do.
It's gotta be pretty deep here before you can't go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as long as nobody would like pull out in front of you or come through an intersection or
Yeah.
something, that's pretty good. So, okay, well, good.